It's Friday. It's the Friday stream.
Let's pick it up. My voice gon' get you if you tell you bet my bet to the very end. Y'all friends gon' need some sleep, cause I'm about to beat them down. My sound gon' wreck you, punch you, pound you, check you, crunch you, deck you. Bada boom 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 boom.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Friday stream, your show that still smells a little bit like Boston. I'm Chris.
I'm Cheese.
Hey Cheesy, how you doing, baby?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. I'm wicked smelly. Well, actually, I took a shower since then, but
I think what you said is you took one of the longest, strongest showers of your life.
yeah, I tried to fillet the skin from my body with the water pressure.
We just got back from Red Hat Summit. Killer trip. We got a Jupiter Broadcasting Airbnb, and we rocked the 9,000 person strong Red Hat Summit. We'll tell you some of our stories from that in a little bit. But first, I got some shout outs, some hollers to give to some of the other crew. Drew's here, Alex is here, and Brent is here as well. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, gentlemen.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw. It's Friday. Oh, this is a hard-earned Friday. We got in last night around 11 p.m., and I didn't really think of this ahead of time. I parked my car down at the airport, and I thought, I'll get in, I'll drive home, and as long as I get myself some good sleep on the airplane, I'll be all right. And to my credit, I did manage to sneak in a little bit of sleep on the airplane, but and I will never make this mistake again. Don't do like Chris does, but I legit fell asleep driving last night on the way home. I don't think Hadia knew because she fell asleep too, but my car has that self-driving lane detection, and it'll stop if there's cars slowing down in front of you, and it'll beep at you if you're like falling asleep and distracted and stuff. Turns out that shit works, man, because it woke me the fuck up, and I was like, whoa. So I rolled down the windows, switched off the podcast, turned on some loud music, and then I was fine the rest of the way. But it was just like all of a sudden, just last night, my head was just drifting off. And I didn't even realize it was happening. It was just one moment I was perfectly fine, and the next moment my head was down. It whipped my head. Whoa, what just happened? Holy crap. And really what woke me up was none of the alarms had gone off yet, and like the self-stop mechanism hadn't kicked in yet, but the wheel had jerked a little bit to catch my attention. And that's all it took. It's like, because I still had my hands on the wheel, so when it jerked to get my attention, I woke up like a lightning bolt had hit me. But that was, whew, yeah, pushing hard this week, hard, long nights. Meanwhile, the newbie, Drew, he's just at home chilling, How you doing, Drew?
Doing great. Yeah, it's been an interesting week, getting kind of settled in and doing some shows, editing some shows, getting that all ready to go for publishing.
Yeah, thank you for going through all the clips from Red Hat Summit. There were, a bunch from each day.
Oh, only about 70.
Yeah, 70 clips that you didn't record or have any context for.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good time. That's good time. Well, welcome, man. This is your first Friday. No, it's your second Friday? No, your first Friday stream, right?
First Friday. I was in the air when you guys were recording last week.
Second week, first Friday stream. And we wanted to give the audience a chance to know Drew. He's been a long time Linux user since really there was a Linux desktop. And we talked a little bit about that in Linux Unplugged 300. But there is something interesting about Drew that we didn't talk about. And rumor around the office has it that you are a rescue rabbit man who rescues rabbits and has like an entire rabbit empire now, which I'm pretty sure, if you're not careful, will overthrow you and the wife and run your entire kingdom. But let's back up before we get there. Let's talk about something that I didn't realize was a thing. I don't know if you knew this, Cheese, but you can actually have like rescue pets, like you can have rescue dogs and rescue cats. There's rescue rabbits, and they don't have superheroes. It's like rabbits that you rescue, Drew. Like what the hell?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm curious, Drew. Like, are these? What I'm thinking is that how everyone wants to get a bunny for their child for Easter or something.
Oh yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, they do not want this rabbit anymore.
More work than they thought it would be.
Yeah, so don't get Easter bunnies.
Oh no! People buy their kids actual bunnies for Easter.
They do.
Oh, people are horrible.
And what they don't realize is rabbits are a lot of work, like a lot. Dogs, cats, they're great pets. And rabbits, a lot of times, are not. Like, don't get me wrong, I love all my rabbits. We have 8. And they're wonderful pets, but they are just a ton of work. A lot of people think, oh, you'll put it in a cage and you don't really have to worry about it most of the time. But
I was just going to ask you, could I have a rabbit and just let it run around a backyard? Say it's fenced in and there weren't animals in the backyard. Could it just be like Bugs Bunny digging holes and running around?
Kind of. It's ill-advised to do that unsupervised. Even if you have a fenced-in area, you think, oh, well, nothing's going to get to it. But if you have any large predator birds anywhere in the area, they can still get to it. Cats can climb over fences, no problem. I mean, there are a lot of things that can get to and eat a rabbit, no problem.
What if I put in like a laser detection grid that automatically would shoot something, not harmful somethings, but just something I just dream of the rabbit running around in the backyard, Drew. I just want to have a whole bunch of rabbits running around my yard. Come on, Drew. You're taking this too far.
What are you going to do in the winter when it gets cold? Where are you going to put them?
You're going to have to build a burrow for them.
We used to have a rabbit back in the day, and we left it outside for a couple of hours unsupervised. We'd been with it all afternoon. We went inside, came back out 2 hours later, and it was gone.
Yeah.
No.
They are precocious little shits. Say you have a fence. Rabbits dig, like a lot. Rabbits will live underground. They'll dig themselves a burrow, get in there, and that's where they have their young, and that's where they're staying when they're not out and about looking for food. So they can get under a fence, no problem. You see a rabbit and you think, oh, it's big and fluffy. Well, it's so fluffy that you can't actually see how small they are underneath. So they can fit through areas that you wouldn't think that they can fit through. I mean, they are wily. So, yeah, I mean, they're a lot of work, but they're very rewarding at the same time. They are excellent pets, but you really need to know what you're getting into if you decide to get a rabbit. All of ours, we don't cage ours. They're free roaming. They're all litter box trained, which is great, but they also don't all get along with each other either. It's not like a dog where a dog sees another dog and 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, you're a dog? I'm a dog too. Let's be dogs together. No, rabbits, they'll fight.
So they're more like cats.
They are, yeah, in that respect. You got to be careful when you're introducing them to each other, and do your research if you're thinking about getting a rabbit, because it is, a 10-year commitment, and they are a little more sensitive when it comes to health issues. Like, there are health things that can happen with rabbits that can require immediate attention that if you're not looking out for it, you won't notice, because they're small, they're quiet, they don't really make a lot of fuss when they're feeling sick. So you cannot know something's wrong until it's too late. So you kind of have to know the signs before you get a rabbit, which is kind of counterintuitive. You think you get a rabbit and then you notice, oh, he's behaving strangely today. Well, by that point, you may be screwed already, and the rabbit may be not able to be saved.
Drew, what's funny, man, is whenever somebody gets seriously into something like an animal or, like for me, it's RVs, like you end up, when you're talking to people about it, you end up kind of trying to sell them out of it. Like, you're trying to talk them out of it a little bit. Like, look, man, this is way more work than you think it is. Like, that's how like, you're deep into this. Are you, when you say rescuing them, though, are you like going down and dropping down like $100 and taking home a rabbit? Or are they coming to you and they're like, Drew, we have too many rabbits and we need you to get this rabbit from us and save it? Like, how is that part working?
Short answer, yes. I mean, we started out, my wife wanted a rabbit, so we did the research, and then we went and got her a rabbit. And then we got a friend for that rabbit. And then we got some more friends, some females for the 2 males.
And then that's how more rabbits are made?
Well, no, we get them all fixed, all spayed or neutered.
It must look ridiculous when rabbits are doing it too, right? That must look like, that's because they're so adorable, but yet they're so fidgety and fast, right?
Honestly, I don't know, because we've always, it's been a policy in our house to get all of our animals spayed or neutered.
Oh, I thought you were going to say we always give them their privacy.
How did you end up with 8 rabbits?
After we got a few rabbits, of course, when we moved down to Savannah, we had to find a vet who was capable of caring for rabbits. There's really one in the area that we trusted, and her staff loves us. And every now and then they get, some rabbit that comes in, and they don't have any place to take it. So eventually the vet started calling us saying like, oh, this rabbit came in off the street. It was obviously domestic. Will you take it in? We've already neutered him and we've kept him for a couple of weeks to make sure he's healthy, but we'd like you to take him because we know that he'll be okay with you. So my wife and I always say yes because we're, bleeding hearts for animals, especially rabbits. And that's happened a few times now. Our latest came from the Las Vegas area where there was kind of an emergency situation and 200 something rabbits ended up in the care of a rabbit rescue out there. And so they've been placing them all over the country. And they reached out to my wife and said, hey, we've got this one that he's our favorite and can we get him to you somehow? And he just joined our Fluffle, which that is the technical term.
Wow.
I swear to God, that is the technical term for a group of rabbits. Murder of crows, pack of dogs, Fluffle of rabbits.
Hey, fun technological fact for a second. Do you know why it's called a pod in Kubernetes?
No.
Because the collective for a group of whales, and what's the logo for Docker is a whale, is a pod. So Kubernetes has pods, which are collections of Docker containers. Anyway, carry on.
And Drew has fluffers.
That's right. But yeah, so it's kind of grown that way. We've only bought, I think, 3 or 4 rabbits total over the years that we've been caring for them, and the rest have all come to us. And there have been some who've passed away from those kind of health issues that I mentioned before, where they just weren't healthy rabbits and they went real quick. So otherwise we would have, I think, 10.
That is a very interesting and unexpected detail from you, Drew, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I don't know if that is more. Is it more or less surprising that Brent also has a bit of a animal farm story? Only his are a little more esoteric than rabbits, aren't they, Brent?
Yeah, I could relate a lot, Drew, to what you're experiencing. I somehow, with a partner of mine previously, found myself fostering a whole bunch of squirrels, a few different litters of squirrels, which was such an amazing experience. And Drew, I'm sure you've appreciated this too. Like, at least the squirrels that I got at the time, they would fit in the palm of your hand. They were a few weeks old. They were sort of, well, the first one came to us from a friend who found it sort of in the middle of a parking lot. And same thing, we did our research and said, like, what the heck do you do with basically a 3-week-old squirrel that doesn't even have its eyes open yet?
You do nothing. That's what you do. You do nothing with it. That's what you do.
Well, it's hard to do nothing. It's easier to do something for some of us with big hearts, I guess.
I suppose.
But it was a cool experience, So we ended up making a connection with a wildlife sanctuary, and there's like lost squirrel baby seasons. They fall out of trees and things, and but anyways, so we ended up going there and saying, like, look, we found the squirrel. Would you guys take it? And they said, well, we have too many, so why don't we teach you how to take care of it? And so they did. And then before we left, they said, well, would you take 2 others with you? So they gave us a cage and this whole thing. So we ended up caring for these squirrels for quite a while. The whole idea with the squirrels, which is different than you, Drew, is that the whole idea is to end up rewilding them. So after, I think it was 2 months, we ended up sort of bringing this litter up.
Aww. You had to let him go.
Yeah, but it was really touching. Like, we taught them how to eat and taught them how to be scared of cars. And the most hilarious thing was, at the time, it was great because the place where I lived was sort of a quiet section of Chinatown in Ottawa at the time. And so I knew a lot of the neighbors, and I had lived there for a little while. So I'd be talking to a neighbor or someone walking by on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden a squirrel would jump on me and go onto my shoulder and just like join the conversation. And you should see the face on the other boy when that happens.
Well, I bet. This man's communicating with these animals. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that too, Brent.
How on earth do you train a squirrel to be scared of cars and stuff?
I was wondering that too. I was wondering how deep we want to go. How deep do we want to go down that hole? But I was curious about that too.
Well, I think it's like anything with people too. You, at least with the squirrels, the strategy was, there weren't very many cars on this dead end street that I lived on, but that was sort of an important life skill for a squirrel, in an urban squirrel at least. So basically, when there was a car coming, we would just sort of scare them on purpose. And I think you do kind of the same thing with dogs. If you're trying to not get them to go into a certain area, you discourage it somehow, right? So I think squirrels have a slightly smaller brain than most of us. So some loud noises and stuff seem to do the trick.
Brent, Squirrel Whisperer. Well, thank you for sharing that, Brent. And Drew, welcome aboard. It's good to have you here for your first Friday stream. Good to have you on the team. Drew is now our second audio editor working with Joe on these fine productions. What do you say, guys? Let's move right along to some actual news. To segue into Red Hat Summit, I thought maybe we could talk about something tangentially related that was going on at the same time as Red Hat Summit, and that's Uber going for its big IPO, the much hyped IPO, but also a massive protest that was going on outside of the convention center that the Red Hat Summit was being held at. And while we were there on day Wednesday and Thursday, there were protests taking place, and there were people that were striking and not driving, not picking up attendees. And when you've got an event with 9,000 people, you need ride-hail services. And it wasn't just Uber drivers protesting, it was also Lyft drivers. It was a joint protest of both, and it made a big impact on the day. And while we were there, we happened to catch a little bit of audio of it. Coinciding with our trip to the Red Hat Summit is a joint protest by Uber and Lyft drivers over the various terms of service that they have with their contractual employers. And as part of their strike, they are taking their cars off the road. So there's about 8,000 attendants here at Red Hat Summit, and there's very few Uber and Lyft rides to accommodate. This has been in the headlines. You knew about this before I did, Wes.
I just heard about it on the news this morning. I mean, it's a big deal, right? How many of us take an Uber or a Lyft ride in a week, a month? Probably many of our listeners. It is a stark reminder that everyone's forced to put on a pleasant demeanor when you're riding the car, or not talk at all. But there are real difficulties just trying to survive in this world.
Yeah, everybody's trying to get that high rating, but there are real issues. They don't want to bitch to you while they're driving, of course, but they also want us to make us aware of it. Do you think it's a coincidence that they're doing it outside an event center that's holding 8,000 attendees to the Red Hat Summit? That can't be a coincidence. They must have known this was their time to strike, and really, in a way, kind of, inconvenience the attendees. I mean, boo-hoo, right? But I mean, it makes an impact when you've got this many people here looking for ride hire services.
Yeah, this is exactly the clientele that is disconnected from the service. And I think it's important, as people in the IT industry, we are the enablers of modern businesses, whether for good or bad, right? Like Uber and Lyft can't operate without the technical people who run their services and make them, perhaps using many of the technologies we see here at the summit. And whether you agree or not, we should at least be thinking about the outcomes of our actions.
Cheese, you had a chance to chat with an Uber driver too about this situation.
Yeah, I did. On the way to the airport, I asked him, I was like, so what's going on, man? So what's this all about? And he was a full-time driver, and he told me, he said, really what it comes down to is that they're, $94 billion, and they're about to IPO, their evaluation, and they're about to IPO, which I think has gone down a little bit since that. They're not giving the drivers a lot of the options that they need first. So, for instance, this guy, he knows that autonomous cars are coming down the road. He knows that Uber is going to be into it. He thinks that he and full-time drivers like himself should have first access to these vehicles so that they can buy them assemble a fleet and have these cars do work for them, which, I think is absolutely. He's looking ahead in the future and where the tech is going to go, and he knows where he needs to be able to make money and to be able to, feed his family. So it's really interesting how they do that and how much of a cut they take. So he said if he had to drive to, say, Rhode Island, Uber would take 30% of that fare right off the top, not taking into account the fact that the car that he's using he was using a get around car, which basically he rents by the hour, by the day, however you want to do that. So it wouldn't be profitable for him to take, someone on a trip like that.
Yeah, you got fuel and maintenance too.
Exactly. So I think that's really where they're frustrated, is that for there needs, the way that he explained it is there needs to be a different tier set for different drivers. If you're a full-time driver, you should get these privileges. He said, there's not even an HR company to contact. It's like, if we have a problem, there's no HR for me to just go talk to. It's not there. It doesn't exist.
Isn't this the gig economy, though? I mean, Alex, you say you've got a take on this too.
I do, and it's a slightly different angle. So when I used to live in London, the black taxi drivers used to regularly block major intersections in London, probably once a month or so, which brought traffic in London to a grinding halt. So you have black cab drivers protesting against Uber. My wife at that point was getting the bus to and from work, which was a school maybe 6 or 7 miles down the road. And because of these black cab drivers, none of the London buses could work. So what's your first reaction? Well, let's call an Uber. It's interesting, so it's not only the Uber drivers who are protesting, it's also the entrenched industry of mini cabs and of black cabs and other ride sharing, whatever you want to call it, services, protesting as well. So there's so many different angles to this. And to reply to Cheese's kind of comment about this guy looking forward and saying he should have first dibs over the ride, the autonomous fleets. I mean, maybe, but it's a capitalist society very much over here. And isn't it survival of the fittest? If you're in a position to be able to think that clearly, that far ahead, all power to you. Go ahead and invest in it if you have the means.
Well, I think his idea was that he didn't want to be replaced by some future fleet in a city such as Boston.
But why? My question really is why should he get first dibs? I'm not saying that he shouldn't have some form of workers' rights, because I think not even having a HR department is pretty poor. And I agree, actually, that full-time employees should probably be different from the gig economy drivers, right? From the people who are just doing a Friday, Saturday night, 2 or 3 hours here or there to make their car payment or whatever. They are different classes of people working, quote unquote, for Uber.
Yeah, fair enough. And you know what? Let us know what you think on Twitter, #FridayStream. But so that takes us to the Red Hat Summit. And we have so many stories we're going to share in Linux Unplugged. There's a lot to go into, but let's start for this show with what I think is perhaps the best 39 seconds of the entire keynote. But before we get to that 39 seconds, we've got to set this up for you. So imagine a giant exhibition hall. You could park several 747s in this thing. I mean, it's long and huge. And overnight, or actually it was probably within a matter of hours, the staff transformed this place into a dark, steamy tunnel with light jets of laser jet-like lights that jetted out of the ground and formed a triangular entrance into what I kind of call Jim's Giant Chat Show, where there was about 8,000 people in one room with a multi-million-dollar stage with giant screens, with couches that would slide out of hidden doors and then move out, and then when they were done, would slide back into a hidden door that was also a screen. It was incredible. Now, we've got some pictures we're going to share for Linux Unplugged. We've got some pictures on my Twitter too. We took lots and lots of pictures. But I thought to kind of give you a sense of what this giant crowd was like, we'd share the best 39 seconds with you that won't be in Linux Unplugged. This was a brilliant moment. We got in a little late, so we were standing on the left side of the room. And I didn't realize at the time that the left side of the room was where the majority of the Red Hatters were sitting. You see, that was where you wanted to be, because you got the Red Hat employees' reaction to everything that was happening on stage. But something that was definitely distinctly noticeable was the clinking of beer bottles on the cement floor of this giant expo hall. And I'm not exaggerating in my cheese when I say you would hear bottles clinking every few seconds, just constantly.
Oh yeah, constantly. You'd hear them. You'd hear like one or two get kicked in the middle of someone's presentation, and then they'd roll down because it had a slide embankment, so it would roll down and it would hit someone else's foot and kind of skid off their foot and roll down. It was hilarious.
It's that unmistakable sound of beer bottles too. It's an undoubted. You know it, and in fact, it was so clear and so loud and so many of them that at first we made the mistaken assumption that, this is Red Hat. They handed out beer to the Red Hatters. Oh no, my friends. No, it's even better than that. The Red Hatters smuggled in their own beer, and their CEO not only noticed, but called them out on stage. This is the best 30 seconds of the entire summit.
Please welcome back to the stage, Jim Whitehurst.
All right. Yep, top level guest now. We went 3 or 4 guest hosts deep. Jim's back up on stage. Still no Satya Nadella, though.
All right, thank you, John. So I have to ask, is there some strange bottle rolling contest going on there? Because if so, I want in. Save the game for me. Give me a few more minutes.
That's hilarious.
As you can see from the stories that we're talking about here.
And then the bottle clinking really picked up after that. It was it was very funny. And I thought for sure at first that everybody had just been handed a beer. There was so much of it. No, there's a lot of little in references and culture things that we were picking up at this Red Hat Summit that I couldn't really appreciate, having been my first time until I had a chance to see some of it firsthand. It's things that just don't get talked about in the news, like only certain people get to have the coveted red hat. Only certain people have this type of thing or this type of shoe or this kind of badge. It's really kind of an interesting hierarchy of a recognition system, and not in a bad way, because that can kind of feel like exclusionary, but instead it's more like achievement milestone has a sense to it. I actually think they do a really good job. But one of the things that blew me away, just the scale of which I've maybe only ever seen at like a Comic-Con or another like outside of the tech industry event, just the scale that is so massive that it's beyond any other kind of tech event I had been to. And that was their expo hall, where multiple booths may have been well over $1 million just to assemble. And I thought it'd be fun just to give you our raw reactions as Wes, Cheese, and I enter the Red Hat Ecosystem Expo Hall for the first time. The press briefings are done, lunch has been had, and now the moment I have been waiting for since we got here and saw them unboxing everything. We are entering the expo hall of all expo halls. One of the most impressive floors I have ever seen in my 10 plus years of covering events. I can't wait to go around and see the floor, from the high-tech lights to the Azure cloud booth, the IBM $1 million booth, Intel's here, Dell's here, and there's a puppy area. I don't know about that. I'm going to figure out what that is too. There's a lot to catch. The money, just the money, like on the displays, like the banners. Cheese and I were walking around just talking to ourselves like, well, that's $1 million right there. There's $1,000 right there. That's $500 just to ship that right there.
Oh, it was insane. And the way that they built it from the first time we kind of peeked in the morning to when we actually walked in and it was all assembled, and the time they had to do it was incredible. I mean, millions and millions of dollars were spent on those they were set pieces, really, is what they were.
Interesting, though, one of the things that drew all of our eyes the most, that was maybe the most indie. And low budge is unfair because it was really well done, but it wasn't a multi-million-dollar booth. It was a real eye catcher, though. If you're a Star Trek fan, it would have drawn you over there because it kind of looked like a Star Trek fan series if they were going to build a warp core. And there were 3 of them, and there was even like conduits that connected them, and then inside these chambers there were phone handles. It really boggled the mind, and we wanted to see what it was about.
Innovators on the line, technology saving lives. So this has been something that's been capturing our attention the entire time. Oh, I see. So Wes, you go in here and you learn about different innovators. You go inside the booth, and then I think you put it up. So here's a chief data scientist, vice president of digital transformation at BP.
And then you would pick up the phone off the handle, which is an old school looking handset, and then you would hear the voice of that particular individual like you're having a phone call with them.
In 20 years' time, unless we do something differently, those beaches won't exist.
It was a fascinating experience because you're in somewhere that's so visually rich. I mean, big, huge LCD screens, lots of lights, and then you go up, and this is a completely audio experience. And as you know, that's something I'm pretty into. I think you could tell I was enjoying it because one of the creators noticed that I was really into it, and she walked up just sort of impromptu, and I just started talking to her.
So I have a sense that you may know a little bit about this. What's your name?
Emily.
Hi, Emily. I'm Chris. So what is this called, and what's the idea behind it?
Yeah, so this is Innovators on the Line. We are from an agency in Portland called Second Story. We partnered with the Red Hat content team and tried to come up with an interesting way to highlight the Innovation Award winners by having this intimate experience like you suggested. The idea is that, it does feel a little bit exhibit-like. It's really special and kind of elevating all of the speakers and what they're saying, and then the content was selected based on different themes. So the central theme being innovation, and then each of the satellite pods, like this one is the future that we're standing in. And then when you listen to the content, it activates the LEDs and really bringing in this sense of connection, but also kind of creating a sense of place as well.
So did your team come up with the design of the booths as well as collect the audio? How does that part of it work?
Yeah, so Red Hat collects the audio. They do all of the interviews and everything, and then they provided us with the content. Our team works with them to select the content and then as well as come up with the design. Red Hat is all about collaboration. You can see it on all of their signage, and they really work quite collaborative with us. So we worked really closely with them at every step, every design decision. We worked with their creative director, so they signed off on everything, and we worked really well with them.
Emily talked a lot about the fact that Red Hat was very collaborative in the process and really open to interesting new ideas. And their team went out and collected that audio too. Just a full spectrum corporate event, polished and well done. And that was a really fun booth. And it turns out they're just down the road from us. There were so many others. We'll talk more in Linux Unplugged, but there's just so many other cool things that they did there, including like hammocks and things like that, and some places to play games. And of course, they had great sessions and events, but there was just aspects of it that were fresh and new, and it was pretty fun. It was a good time going to Boston. We got to hang out downtown Boston. We got an Airbnb that was great. You know what we ought to do, Cheese? Let's see if we can find Wes Payne. What do you see? Wes, where's Wes at? You want to call him up? You want to call up Wes? Let's see if he answers.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Payne. Happy Friday to you, sir. It's Friday.
It's Friday.
So I was just telling the show about how great it was that we got to go to Boston and just really enjoy the city, how beautiful it was, how quiet it was, how nice the Airbnb was, and I thought maybe you'd like to share an anecdote from your experience on the trip.
So, okay, my favorite part is that we brought a non-conference attendee, your lovely wife, Hadia, of course, because, I mean, as you've just been talking about, there was a ton going on at the Red Hat Summit, so we didn't quite get to see enough of Boston as maybe we would have liked. But Hadia did, and she figured out all the best places for us to go. So not only did we wake up in the morning to her making pancakes, but she took us to an amazing Boston pastry joint, and then we all got a sugar high.
She'd go out and do our Boston recon while we would be working the press track at the Red Hat Summit, and then we'd text her as we're finishing up, and we'd either meet up wherever. And we also went to Cheers, of course. You got to do that when you're in Boston. That was great. That was so much fun. Wes, it was really great hanging out with you too. Turns out you don't make for a bad roommate. I can officially say, if you ever need a roommate reference, you can put me down now on your list.
That really was nice, and we got a brainstorming center instead of being in 3 separate hotel rooms disconnected with each other. The Airbnb actually had a living room where we could all hang out and reflect on the day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually made a big difference because we would then, and there was like one evening we sat out in the backyard in like rocking chairs and lawn chairs, and we're chatting about just sort of processing the entire thing. And it kind of helped us put all of it in context, where if we'd gone off into our individual hotel rooms, we wouldn't have done that.
That's where all of our key insights came from. So, no credit to us, all credit to the Airbnb.
Yeah. Also, thanks to Cheese and you for broing up and letting the lady and I have a little alone time every now and then. That was nice. You went out and hit a liquor store run while the lady and I got, husband and wife time. So thank you guys for that. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
All right, Wes. Have a good rest of your Friday. We'll talk to you later.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. There you go. Wes Payne, everybody, on the Jupiter bat signal. Had a really good time there. And would love to go back to Boston sometime. I was remarking to the guys the entire trip, like, I can't believe how quiet it is here. I don't know what I expected, but when you're in downtown, I just kind of expected like horns and swearing. Like it sounds like when you're in New York or downtown Seattle or whatever. But no, it's very quiet, very peaceful, very pretty.
Are there horns and swearing in Seattle? I didn't see any of that when I was there.
Well, there's some honking, honk, honk, get out of the way, asshole, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that.
Oh, not like flugelhorns or anything. That's what I was picturing.
Now, there's tons of that. I think what it is in Boston, there's plenty of that. But they got all these weird shaped buildings that like curve, and they just have like sound blocking, dampening mechanisms throughout the city. We were in an Airbnb downtown, and we're in like 11 o'clock at night, and we're in the backyard, and it's like whisper quiet. In a downtown of a city. Like, that just seems really odd to me. That's just not typically my experience,
Logical.
Chris, do you have any sense of the population of Boston?
I think it's billions. I think it's billions and billions. No, I didn't. It felt like there was quite a bit of people. It was kind of busy and crowded, but not as busy and crowded as some other East Coast cities that I've been to. So,
approximately 700,000.
So you mean not 7 billion people in one city?
No.
I thought for sure that's what it was.
The reason I ask is that I lived in Ottawa for a while, and I guess my squirrel story tied to that, but it was about 900,000, and the downtown in Ottawa, and it's maybe like this in Boston that you experienced, the downtown in Ottawa would just totally clear out on weekends and was completely a dead place, and that's basically why I lived there, because it was super quiet whenever I wanted to do anything. So I wonder if it's the same case.
Bizarrely, it's the same story in the city of London as well. So every block or so in London, we don't have blocks, but you know what I mean. There's a Starbucks and a Pret a Manger, and you can't walk more than 30 seconds during the week without going past some kind of a food outlet. But at the weekend, if you go down there on a Saturday or a Sunday, you have to walk like a mile to get to one that's actually open. You have to walk past several of these things that are closed because during, these things are set up to work during, business hours to cater to suits, not normal people like us.
There's a couple of stories that don't fit in a lot of our other shows. Like some of the things that are coming out of Google I.O. that just doesn't really fit in any of the categories of our show. So I thought we could cover some of that here and chat with you guys about it. And maybe the big story that everybody's been anticipating for quite a while, but actually happened finally, is the announcement of the Pixel 3a. Here's a clip from The Verge.
This is a solid phone that costs $400 and it has a great camera. That combination of those three things never happens.
And that's the Pixel 3, I think, right there in a nutshell. It's rendered in plastic, as they put it. It has the Snapdragon 670 system on a chip, so it's a little bit slower. It actually has a slightly better battery, and it has the same camera as the higher-end Pixel.
Is this the natural successor to the Nexus 5 then, do you think?
That's what I was thinking.
I wonder if is it them writing a mistake? Because the Pixel sales have been a bit underwhelming, And I always thought that was one of the great things about the Nexus line is it gave you a decent phone with great mainline Android. So perhaps they went, oh, maybe we should do that. But it seems like then if you do that, you're going to cannibalize a lot of the higher end Pixel sales. But I think the strategy, think of it this way. I think it makes more sense when you go big picture and think, what if they kept doing this? So David Ruddick, writing for Android Police, says that in a briefing at Google's hardware division last week, one message the team was like trying to drill into him the entire time is that the Pixel 3a and 3a XL are not one-off devices. In his words, Google is committing, at least for the foreseeable future, to releasing affordable versions of its Pixel smartphones, presumably on an annual basis. So you're going to get the main Pixel phone, and then when they figure out, like 9 months later or whatever it is, 6 months later, when they figure out how to make it cheaper, they're going to release like the A iteration. So whereas Apple does the S, where it's faster, they're going to do the A, and it's slower, cheaper, but they're going to try, it sounds like, to pull forward the killer feature of the main phone. In this case, the camera.
It's interesting because you have OnePlus that have kind of filled this gap for a while, and there are loads of other sort of smaller companies filling. There's Pokerphone, who released a really good phone last year, which is pretty much only available in India, but you could find it if you knew where to look. And I think there is definitely that sort of $400-$500 sweet spot for a phone. And if companies can get it right, I mean, I find it interesting that they included a headphone jack in this phone, but not in the main Pixel. It's catering to a completely different set of users. So I guess somebody somewhere went, well, people that are buying a $400-$500 phone aren't probably bought into that Bluetooth wireless ecosystem yet.
That might be part of why it's not a new Nexus line, because the Nexus was always sort of the high mid-range, cost-conscious device that served as a reference for this is what Android should be. Now you can iterate on this and make it more powerful and more fancy with the custom, Samsung or Huawei, HTC, whatever they want to put on top and really trick it out for a high-end device. But, the Nexus was always kind of like an affordable device that just kind of showed off what Android could do for not a huge amount of money. And I don't know, this does feel a little different.
I think there's another way to put it, and I'm curious to know what you think, Drew. I think another way to put it is it's a different set of compromises. So a couple other things that jump out at me about the Pixel 3a. No wireless charging. That's something I like a lot, but not everybody does. And the fact that it doesn't have water resistance. I find that to be supremely valuable, but not everybody does. A lot of people have a phone today, much older than a Pixel 3a, that isn't water resistant. They don't, and they're fine with that. And I don't care about not having a headphone jack, but other people care a lot about that. There's different sets of compromises they're willing to make. The screen isn't quite as good as the main Pixel 3 screen. The Pixel CPU isn't quite as fast as the main Pixel 3 CPU. But you got that camera. You got that form factor. You got that Google support, that mainline OS support. And if you're coming from a much older device, or maybe you're fed up with a crapware device, it seems like a pretty solid option. I just wonder how much they're going to cannibalize the regular premium Pixel product line. But I think maybe they're going to also use this as an opportunity to do crazier, higher-end stuff in the higher Pixel. Because if now they're going to offer a cheaper one, then they can also afford to go a little crazier and go even fancier in the main Pixel Cadillac device. And you could kind of expect that maybe a year or two later, those Cadillac features, if you will allow the term, to then transition down to the A devices. And so as a cycle, you'll know first it premieres here, sort of like a lot of auto manufacturers do. First something premieres in the Audi, and then before you know it, it's in the Volkswagen Golf. It's kind of a similar thing. First it premieres in the Pixel line, and then in a year or next year, now it's cheap enough, it's shipping in the Pixel 3a or 4a or 5a line, whatever it might be. And it could be a pretty solid strategy, because it gives them a chance to really put the pedal to the metal on the main Pixel device and not try to have to still be kind of price conscious like they have remained.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big reasons why you see like the headphone jack thrown in, because it costs little to nothing for them to throw that in, right? The Pixel 3a device could maybe be a little bit cheaper in that mid-range price point market that other manufacturers are hitting. But I think you're right. I think it allows them to really iterate on new and awesome features in the Pixel line and not have to try and tone down how much they're willing to resell that item for. I definitely think with the 3A, they're going to make a lot more money per device than what they do with the 3.
Yeah, they're doing other like money saving tricks too. Like they're not using Gorilla Glass; they're using like a knockoff Gorilla Glass. There's like little things like that in there too that will save them money.
There's also the supply chain to consider. Once those supply chains are built up for the AAA devices, then they can reuse those same supply chains for less money down the road because they don't have to be recreated. They're already there.
Absolutely.
True enough. Yeah. And that's what Apple does with the iPhone line right now. And it's sort of worked perfectly for them. They make a ton of money.
I'm so pleased to see it. I think the Nexus 5 was probably the best phone of the last, dare I say it, 8-9 years, something like that. I used the heck out of that thing until I literally dropped it down the toilet.
Okay, very nice. All right, well, Cheesy, what do you know about Android Auto? Do you ever use Android Auto in any cars or rentals that you've had?
Not really. I do use it occasionally on my phone.
Oh yeah, sure, on the phone mode. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just set it up and just rock it that way whenever I'm in the car.
Alex, do you use it with your Golf?
I love it, and I explicitly wouldn't buy a car without it now.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. That's the camp I'm in too. I'm in that same camp, Android Auto or CarPlay. Right now, I prefer CarPlay. In fact, while you were up here for Linux Fest Northwest, I was kind of going on and on about what I prefer about CarPlay, and it mostly comes down to the way they've arranged the UI. But it looks like Google may have just leapfrogged Apple in the UI department, and this is shipping this summer, they say. Here's a brief clip from Engadget.
And right off of the bat, we're jumping into Google Maps. This doesn't look like what you're used to because Google specifically wanted this to function more like your Android smartphone. You've got sort of a more minimal information tray up top and then a main dock at the bottom. And we've got a couple interesting things going on down here. There's a bell button that actually brings up your notifications that allow you to really quickly triage what's coming in, especially handy if you're at like a stoplight or something and you just need to catch up really quickly.
So just like how CarPlay now has a dock along the left-hand side, which I think is actually superior because it's closer to the driver, and if you have a steering wheel on the other side, then the dock moves to whichever side the steering wheel of the vehicle is on.
The right side, you mean?
Yeah, the other side. The Android Auto interface is going to be just a dock at the bottom of the screen, which it's fine, but it's not quite as accessible. But they're going to have a home button, just like CarPlay has. They'll have the most frequent app, just like CarPlay has, and playback controls all right there in the dock, which is going to be a massive UI improvement for how you navigate this thing. I think it's going to be much, much better. And it's going to have, on top of all of that, an actual straight-up application launcher.
One of the last big changes you'll see here is one that Android Auto users have been trying in vain to get for a long time. In the classic Android Auto, accessing your apps is kind of a pain in the ass. It involved a couple menus. It was less elegant than it should be by far. Google has thankfully fixed that with a handy button over here in the corner that brings up exactly what you're used to. If you have an Android phone, this is your app launcher.
Yeah, it gives you the drawer of all your apps, essentially. Any of them, at least, that are compatible with Android Auto. So if you'd like to visualize this, if you'd like to see it, I have links to these articles as well as a video walkthrough at fridaystream.com/3. So go take a look at it if you're an Android Auto user. It seems like a big improvement, a much, much needed improvement. It's been straight up 5 years since Google has really iterated on the Android Auto UI. 5 years.
I want this update so bad. I tell you what, there's quite a few things using it every day that just drive you crazy. Like if you want to jump, for example, from Maps between Pocket Casts and Spotify, I was counting it the day. There's about 5 taps I have to make on the screen.
I did the same count.
The whole point is I'm driving down the road. I should have to do the bare minimum here, not have to work out how to drive the Starship Enterprise in the middle of my thing. And there is one thing that the Engadget guy picked up, which I wanted to touch on briefly, which is triaging notifications as you're driving down the road. Who are these people that can't wait 30 minutes to read a text message until they get home? Why does that have to be a thing? Maybe I'm a Luddite or something, but
I agree. I think the better way to do it would be to just hide all that stuff away automatically when it detects you're in Android Auto mode.
It's distracting. Don't show me a thing that says I've just had a text from Jupiter Broadcasting Group, right? I don't need to know that on the freeway.
Yeah, I mean, he couches it by saying, well, it's when you're at a stop sign. Yet still, don't.
We've all seen people driving down the road with YouTube in front of their steering wheel. We know what's going to happen.
But I would argue I do a lot of long travels, like 3+ hours, sometimes up to 8 or so. And I think that would be really great for me to be able to choose whether or not it's worth stopping to respond to something, because I'm usually traveling during business hours. And while I can wait for most things, sometimes it's worth stopping. So maybe it'll help. Yeah,
I could been there. Yep, been there too. I can get that.
You're a responsible adult though, Brent, and not everybody is such minded.
Thank you.
So one thing I'm wondering is, using the app on the phone, my car doesn't have, Android Auto built into like a display. And I have tried on several occasions to use it as an app on my phone, where my phone's, sitting in a dock on my dashboard. And the performance is just god awful. And this is on a Pixel 2 XL, right? So it's not exactly like a schlub of a phone, but I'm wondering if they're ever going to make that experience any better, because right now it is atrocious, even on high-end devices.
It's better just not to use the full screen mode on the phone. If you're plugging into your car's infotainment system, the experience is much better.
Yeah.
But just using the phone screen is hot garbage. I'd agree.
Oh, it's terrible. I stopped using it. I just dropped back to, they have lovely Spotify connection with Google Maps now, which works fine.
Yeah.
And I just can't. I uninstalled Android Auto altogether because it's so bad.
Well, this is where Google often has multiple stories and initiatives going on at the same time that kind of conflict with themselves. Because if you're paying attention to Google I/O, it also kind of sounds like Google Assistant might just replace the entire Android Auto interface one day. And also, good news, everybody, it's also coming to Waze.
Last year, we brought the Assistant to Android Auto, and earlier this year, we added it to navigation in Google Maps. I'm happy to share the Assistant is also coming to Waze in the next few weeks. Now, I'd like to show you the future of how we're improving your mobile driving experience even more. Introducing the Assistant's new driving mode. Just put your phone in the car and say, "Hey Google, let's drive." Driving mode has a thoughtfully designed dashboard that brings your most relevant activities front and center while you're driving, and includes suggestions personalized for you. For example, if you have a dinner reservation on your calendar, you'll see a convenient shortcut to navigate to the restaurant. Or if you started a podcast at home in the morning, once you get in your car, it'll display a shortcut to resume the episode right where you left off.
I mean, to me, it sounds like they're working on a Google Assistant UI that just essentially replaces Android Auto. And maybe that would be better, because I have found one of the better ways to use Android Auto is through the Assistant, because then it's completely hands-free. And if they could just make that better, make that a premier feature, then it'd be great, especially with a lot of the on-device processing they announced at I/O as well. And we'll see how far they take this, but that's a direction I'm really, really, really happy to see Google go. They talk about taking some of their voice models and breaking it down to just half a gig, and then deploying that onto new Android devices so that the Assistant will do the voice recognition and context understanding on device. And they claim it gives it a 10x speed improvement. So there's real motivation to do it. And then it would work offline, and then it would work much better as a car interface. You can see maybe where they're taking this thing. But like all things Google now, I worry about the future of a product that I use. Now it's like, sounds like Android Auto's days are numbered. It's going to go away.
Did you see that they're shuttering the Works with Nest program this week?
Yes, but they also renamed the Home Hub to be like Google Home Nest Hub or something.
Yeah, they're just reusing that brand, and you do touch on a really interesting point that you just can't trust any Google product to have any longevity. It's a fool's errand. Just to touch on that works with Nest thing very quickly. For a product which advertised if this then that support on the box, they are now breaking that compatibility with if this then that with that withdrawal announcement this week.
Fascinating.
So do not rely on anything that Google make to stick around.
It's if only somebody could have given a talk on how to have a home automation system that doesn't rely on the cloud.
If only. Self-host all the things.
Yes, we may have audio of that talk at github.com/Jupiter Broadcasting even. So moving on, let's one last little thing, just jumping out before we get out of here. Every now and then on the Friday stream, read just as often as we possibly can. We want to recap a moment that happened on the network. Could be from all of the shows, one of the shows. Well, this week, I didn't pick this clip because I was at Red Hat Summit. I'm betting either Joe or Drew picked this clip. And listening back to it, I can't believe we did this. And I won't say anything more, but in Linux Unplugged 300, because I love to have fun on the show live, I talked Wes into live upgrading one of our most valuable production servers running Fedora. And it didn't go great. This is what I sound like when I'm having a panic attack, by the way. I still sound like my regular self. I'm just exploding with emotions on the inside.
Well, I'm trying to load the upload page that I use to publish the shows and nothing yet.
Yeah, that means the containers haven't started yet. That's for the Castablasta system. Oh, God, Wes. Oh, God. Oh, my God.
I mean, we've had a clean disk mount. That's always good.
I got to come over and look. I got to come over here and look. Stand by. Okay. All right. That's just a bunch of systemd error messages on the screen right now.
I mean, they're audit log
Oh my
lines.
God! I just broke one of our most important servers for a stupid bit on the show. Then the show wraps up, and in the post show, Wes does get the server back online. So we thought by the end of the post show, we were in good shape, and for the most part, I mean, we are in shape. But we're not in good shape. I discovered while we were in Boston, this is my morning. I'm sitting in the Airbnb trying to wake my ass up after a night of being up doing things. And I'm sitting there in the kitchen and Wes Payne comes up the steps and he's like, have you been rebooting Orbital? And I say, what? Orbital, have you been rebooting it? What are you talking about? It's been rebooting. In fact, I think it killed a job, and it's caused a few issues. And I think, oh, crap. We just upgraded that thing to Fedora 30 and left for Boston, didn't we? And now we're having issues?
Shocker.
It was. Yeah, so it's not flawless, but it is working. However, my Fedora 30 workstation seems to be just fine. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what the cause of all the issues were because we haven't dug into it yet. But I'll try to get to the bottom of it before the next Linux Unplugged. We'll probably figure it out by then. Cheesy, I think that's it for today. I think we're all done here, man.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Woo! It's time for you to recover this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know what I'm going to do this weekend?
What?
You know what I'm doing? I got my Node MCUs in. I've got a little OLED screen to play with. I got some DHT 111 sensors. I got a brand new soldering iron.
Damn, girl.
Some solder. I'm going to get in it, man. And then I'm going to bug the hell out of Alex while it doesn't work.
My Telegram inbox is on mute, cheese.
Oh, man. Well, Alex, thank you once again for joining us and hosting Plex Server. Anyways, also, Drew, great to have you.
Pleasure's mine.
Hope you'll come back soon. Brent, good to see you as always. How are things up there? Are you on the west or the east?
Where's Brent? I'm actually, what is it? West? Still in BC. So I'm going to be here for another week or two. So a few shows, but yeah, everything's great. So great to be here.
Nice, man. Well, have a good weekend.
Oh, thanks.
It's good to see you. Now, the Friday stream is actually a show. It's a legit show. FridayStream.com. It's in iTunes now. It's in the podcast directories. You can watch us live. See you back here next Friday.
I got the shag on the seat, so vintage. I like your whipped cream better than a movie screen. I better love you like a bag